Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Katie Brown. I am the CRT at Southwest Middle School. We are also very lucky to have Nancy Bittinger in the room. Nancy works for the district and helps with all kinds of technology across, I don't know if you all have interacted with Nancy, but you should. She's fantastic. So Nancy will be moderating in the chat box. I will be navigating between several screens. So if I don't see your question right away, just give me just a second. I'll pop back in and check on those, but hopefully Nancy can kind of help moderate that in the chat section for us. If you weren't here when I said it before, up in the shared notes, there is an agenda that you'll need for today. It has some links and goodies you'll want in there. And then there's also a link to a Padlet. If you wouldn't mind just taking a few minutes and filling out that Padlet if you have a chance while we're working, that's fine. If not, don't worry about it. It's nothing essential. I'm going to go ahead and enlarge my screen and get started with the presentation, which means I cannot see you now. So this is a little odd. We're here today to talk about ways to engage students in virtual sessions. The time that we spend with students now face-to-face is precious. And so this session will talk through some tips and tricks for how to maximize that time and a little bit of reasoning as to why and when we use live conferencing with students. So there's two purposes when you live conference with students. The first is interaction. It gives students the opportunity to communicate with each other, to communicate with you. And right now, that's really important for social emotional health as well, that we give students the chance to interact with each other. But interaction actually goes beyond that as well. A huge purpose to meeting virtually with students is to keep them engaged and vested in your class online. A lot of times, if we don't see kids face to face in this virtual setting, they tend to turn in poor quality work, maybe not turn in work on time, or maybe not turn work in at all because they don't see you. And so they don't see the value in turning their work in. Whereas if you can engage them and interact with them and continue relationship building with them virtually, they're more likely to be vested in your class and to take your coursework more seriously. Just like in classroom settings, relationship building right now with our students is very important. It looks very different, but it's very important. In interaction, they're not necessarily learning something. It's more social than that. Now, that doesn't mean because they're not learning that there's not a place for this. Interaction is a huge part of interfacing with students because it gives them the confidence to participate. And so if you're engaging them in your interaction sessions, they're more likely to engage when you're doing the collaboration or the academic component as well. So in the interaction, our two biggest areas for those are kind of the same thing, are warm-ups and icebreakers. If you're not currently using these when you have live sessions with students, I strongly encourage you to start, because while it seems like it's gonna take a lot of time and there's no academic value, there is a lot of academic value in giving students the chance to become comfortable speaking in a virtual setting. So tips for that, if you haven't already allowed students to speak, what you might want to do is just give the first 3 minutes of the time together or the 3 minutes at the end to just unmute everybody and let everybody just kind of free talk. In the lower grades, that can be a little tricky because they don't really know how to interact like this. And so you can give them a prompt. If you open your agenda and click on the sample prompts, I've come up with a list of 20 sample prompts you can use with your students. Some of them are can be tied to academic purposes. Some of them are just ways to get them thinking. Some of them are just funny questions to ask. My favorite is, what's your favorite snack during this time? What's your daily schedule look like now? Kids work on different schedules. So a lot of these are just interest questions to get kids talking. Again, if they're comfortable talking to you in an icebreaker format, they'll be more comfortable talking to you in an academic format later. Let me get my screen back here. Another thing to consider are show and tell formats. And I know that that phrase show and tell lends itself really well to elementary, but I'm a secondary teacher and I've used show and tell formats with my students virtually as well. There is nothing kids love more than seeing what is going on in someone else's home. And I mean, think about it. We're the same way. The first thing I do when I get on these is look to see what people's houses look like and things like that. So we're just nosy people. So giving students a chance to sort of show and tell what's around them. It's easier if you give them a purpose for that and you give them a heads up. You'll have more response time or more response if you can give them that question ahead of time. So maybe you send that out through Canvas or whatever mechanism you're using for communication. Hey, when we get together, we're going to be showing and telling about something that's keeping you busy these days. And so they can bring it and show and tell. For your secondary students, I definitely would not use the phrase show and tell. They will shut you down right away. But just something to let them know that we want to see what's going on around you if they're comfortable sharing. Okay, so let's move then into the collaboration. In the collaboration, that is actually where true learning happens, because just like in a classroom, collaboration requires students to work together to deepen their understanding. And so we want to foster that even in virtual classrooms as well. So today we're going through 3 different levels of collaboration: mild, medium, and spicy. Any of these are fantastic to use, but go with what you're comfortable using. So we're going to start with the mild. And first, I'm going to check and make sure that we have no questions. Everybody's good to go?
Yep, so far, Katie, so good.
Okay, good. Then I'm just going to keep on trucking. Thanks, Nancy. Get my window back. So mild collaboration is really where it's sort of like I equate that to toddlers when they do what's called parallel play. They like just kind of work next to each other. That's kind of mild collaboration. It's not necessarily deepening learning, but it's giving them a chance to kind of look over and see what somebody else is doing. And so what we're doing right now is a mild collaboration activity. As we go through and we interact and look at some activities together, that will be mild collaboration. You can use this in a couple different ways. Students, you might have a whole class discussion in a virtual format about an assignment that they've completed. So maybe you go through and have, you work question at a time and you have different students share out how they answered each question and why. You can have them share out answers and projects individually. So that would be something you would give them ahead of time. Can you share out with us what you found in your research? And then they know when they come in, they're going to have to share whatever they've been working on. So don't hesitate to give them the work outside of the session and then have them bring their findings to the session. That's the same thing as having them work independently for a while before speaking in class. It gives them a chance to think it through and prepare. You can also have them respond to online activities. So the Padlet that you did at the beginning, if we were to go back right now and go through the Padlet together, that would be a version of mild collaboration. I'm going to not do that right now because I want to spend most of our time in the medium and spicy sections. But just know that mild collaboration is equivalent to like parallel play with students. So if we move into the medium collaboration is where we start to see them sort of deepening their understanding through the use of each other. One way you can tell if you're collaborating well is to ask yourself, could they do this if they didn't have the device in front of them? And you want that answer to be no. That means that what you're doing is essential. If it's something that they could do in class on paper, then it's not essential digital work. And so we want them to be doing essential work digitally. So let's take a second. We're going to interact on this one. If you'll go to your agenda, and in the agenda, there is a sample Google Slides. It's right here. If you'll open that document. And nobody type anything. We're just looking. So this strategy, actually, you can use this whether you're teaching virtually or not. This is an activity I used to do in my classroom, but virtually it works well too. So what this is you can put questions on each slide, make a template, and then students have the ability to interact through the template version. So I'm going to give you the instructions just as I would my students. But before I start, I'm going to show you an insider tip. I have also made, let me share my screen. I've also made a template version of this because you all know somebody is going to delete the slide. And so I have a template version that I don't share ready and waiting to go. All I have to do is just copy the slide and drop it back in. So it keeps the class going even if accidents happen and something gets deleted. So just make yourself a private copy and then have a forward-facing one that your students interact in. So here's your instructions for this. I have 3 slides here in our presentation. I'd like you to select one slide, right-click on it, and make a copy of that slide. Once you've made a copy of that slide or duplicated it, then I want you to fill in the answers on your copy of the slide. So I'm going to give everybody about 3 minutes to duplicate a slide and make and answer it, fill it in. We don't have any math teachers in the room today. So as you're typing, I'm just going to talk through how you can use this in different subject areas. You can see I do have a sample math one, which is purple or pink, whatever you want to call that color, asking them how they solved the math problem. So that's one way you can do it. If we're in a math class, you can ask put an answer up and have them write a problem that answers that question. Anything to have them interact with the material. You want to make sure though that whatever you're putting on these slides, it's not there's not just one answer. You want something that's open-ended so that everybody can contribute something different. On the green slide, for all my language arts teachers out there, we have a question about the text that we're reading. So if you are reading a text with your students, if you've had them read a text, your questions might be geared around a specific text that you've been interacting with your students. Another way that this type of assignment is helpful is as a study guide. So if you open these up and you put, let's say I'm a history teacher, and we're studying the Civil War, I might have different slides that have different topics in them. So I might have one on battles, one on living conditions, one on what is that called? Inventions, geez. One on inventions that come out of this time period. So you can put topics too, really loose topics, and have kids list what they know. By the time they're done, what you have is a whole presentation that all of your students have contributed to with information on it. To deepen the discourse and the collaboration on this, it would be fun for you to go through and start having students share out. Look at Nancy, our star student here, has put in a picture. Cleaning stalls for my friend's horse barn. That's awesome. If we were in an academic format, I would say, Nancy, can you tell us about being at your friend's horse barn? And then Nancy would be able to share out. We could have a discussion about that. Does anybody have any questions about being at the horse barn? So these slides are not only a place to give students a chance to put their information, but you can also turn them into a discussion activity as well. Okay, I'm going to close out of this activity. And I'm going to go back to my presentation. Nancy, you're just going to yell out if somebody has any questions, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And Jennifer has a question. Can she have the steps on how to do that?
Absolutely. Yes. I will send that. And what?
I think that's a good question that others may have as well, the steps on how you go about setting that up. Great.
Absolutely. So in my template, I create my slides. I'll just start with a new one so we have a fresh one to work with here. So in Google Slides, I'm going to create my template first. And my template is the one, remember, that I will not share with students because I don't want to lose these slides. Having trouble keeping up with all these Zoom calls happening at one time. So in my slide, what I would do is I would go ahead and create the slides that I wanted students to keep, like that I wanted them to duplicate. Change the background up here. I find it's easier when you have a bunch of people working on slides if they're color coordinated. You can also color coordinate by topic. So if I was asking a math question, I might put all my math questions in one color. If I was asking a reading question, they might be in another color. That social studies example I was using, I might have all of my battle slides in one color and all of my health slides in another color. So the color coordinating is really more for me than it is for the students. It just helps me see what's going on. In the layout, I typically use this layout version just because it's easiest for kids to type in, and I type my question in the top. So my question goes here. And they should be, like I said, fairly broad questions. In the text box, I'm going to ask them any questions I want. I always want their name. And then if I have questions about it, so tell me what you know about, and then whatever the topic would be. You could also put in multiple choice questions. Hold on, I have another one of these that I can show you as a sample. Let me see if I think it's in my.
And while you're setting that up, Katie, for the younger students, I know in some elementary schools, the students have assigned numbers. And so the teachers already set up the slides. And so if you know your number 2, you know slide number 2 is where you go to. That Absolutely. Can be another strategy.
Yep, keep them in the same place. That's usually really helpful. These slides that I have that I've set up before, I'm not going to do it, but I'll share it with you after. I'll put the link into the agenda so that you have it. But you can also ask multiple choice questions if you're doing like test prep, and then have them answer those and explain the answer. Or give them the answer and have them write the question. And that turns each slide into a study tool for them. Now, once I'm done with my template, I'm going to take these 3 slides and I'm going to right click on them and I'm going to copy them. And then I'm going to go into my new presentation and I'm going to paste them here. Don't link. Now I have the 3 main slides so that I know that this is what they're going to use. When I share this with students, I want to make sure that it's editable. Oh, yes, we'll take that as my name. So make sure that when you get your shareable link, that's an editable document for them. Otherwise, they won't be able to write on it. So click Can Edit. Copy the link, and then that's what I will share with students either in my chat box or through whatever mode of communication I'm using to get information out to students. Good question. Okay, so I'm going to move ahead then in the presentation and look at some other options for medium collaboration. Medium collaboration can involve partner work. And remember that discussions don't have to generate inside the Zoom room, or sorry, not Zoom, inside the video conference. When they come together, it's actually very difficult to give students a task on the spot and ask them to collaborate. It's best if you can provide that information up front for them or give them a chance to prepare and then contribute to the conversation. So you can partner students up. You can give them small groups. Just put that out through I use Canvas, so I'm going to say Canvas, but whatever your mode, Google Classroom or emailing parents, however you're getting information out, you can send out that information on this is what your group is going to be. And then you can have them either work together through a Google Doc. So if I had a shared Google Doc, students could use the Google Doc to communicate back and forth. You could have them set up, if they wanted to set up a video conference, they could go through you and you could open a BBB conference room for whatever small group is there and you would just sit in on their time together. Or a lot of times kids know each other and they can, text each other outside of class. That depends on the age of the student. But you can have them prep their materials outside of the video time, and then when they come together, they're ready to share that information. I also use something called split work time. So I used to do workshops like this virtually full time. And one of the things that I used was split work times in those sessions to make sure people had time to try things out. So I used a 10-10-10 structure. I know some facilitators use like a 5-25, but however you want to do it, the idea is that you speak for the first 10 minutes, and then you have everybody mute and turn off their webcams. Now, if the technology end of that, you're like, oh, I don't want them to mess with their stuff, you can just tell them to cover their webcam with something, whatever it is, but you want the webcams off and you want the sound off so that everybody can work independently on their own and then come back to the conversation once you call everyone back in. So it's the same as giving them independent work time in a classroom where you're there to kind of help if there's issues, or but it's really time for them to work independently. And then the last 10 minutes when you come back together, you're reviewing the information, answering questions, students are helping each other. So the split work times is a really great way to get students to take ownership of the information, because you have to give them processing time. And sometimes people think, well, if I'm in the video conference, I have to be doing something the whole time. You don't have to be doing something the whole time. You can be quiet and let them work a little bit in that format. So think of your virtual time with them as a class time. Sometimes they need to work independently, and you can give them that option. Okay, I'm gonna flip back over to my BBB screen and talk a little bit about BBB whiteboards. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. So on my screen right now, or on your screen, you should see the welcome to the big blue button, and you will probably see my little icon spinning around, moving all over the board. I can actually give students the ability to write on this as well. So on my screen, I'm going to share this with you. It's going to give you a little bit of a matrix effect because you're going to see like a whole bunch of screens, but I'll help you focus on what you're looking at. Give it just a second to connect. Give it a couple seconds to connect. You can do it, BBB. You can do it.
There's a lot of patience involved in all of this for all of us.
A lot of patience. I'm going to try
and it's
it
not
again.
us, it's them. It's not us.
Always. It's a good mantra. Okay, we're going to try this again.
While that's popping up, Melanie, and you were mentioning about turning the students off, as the presenter, you can also mute and lock down everybody and stop them as well. And that's just another strategy. And I think we've got your infinity window here.
I'm sorry, I have a really old deaf dog, and she's like drinking. I'm trying to yell her name to stop drinking water. Molly! Oh my gosh, so professional. So ignore that waterfall that's happening in the background. So on my screen here, you can see down at the bottom where I have the ability to share out. I'm going to share, I'm going to stop sharing. You won't be able to see it, but on the left-hand side, so over here, there will be, oh my gosh, you're going to have to hold on while I yell at my dog. She is literally like deaf as a doornail. Okay, or a doorknob. Okay, so over on the side over here, you'll have some tools as the presenter that will pop up, and it will say, turn on your whiteboard capabilities. And so that's what I'm gonna turn on now for you. I'm gonna turn on that whiteboard, and if you'll notice, if you start moving your mouse around on the big blue button slide, you'll see that your button is there. You have the option, if you click the little tools menu on the side, you'll have the option to use text. You can use pencil. You can write a shape. And then you should have also the ability to erase as well. So what this is good for I'm going to switch you guys over. Hold on, here we go, to a blank slide. What this is good for is allowing students to work on the spot. So particularly if there's something where you're looking at misconceptions, this is a great place to work on misconceptions for math. So if I put up a math problem on this whiteboard and then I have students come through and show me or circle where the mistake is, or can you solve this in a different way, that's a great use of the whiteboard. Another way that you can use this screen is if you put a passage up. So the nice thing is I can actually put up, you guys can draw on any slide that I put up here. So like if this was a slide that I was working on, you can draw on any slide. So if I had a slide up that has a, here, I'm going to put one up so we can see it. Hold on. Hold, please. Gabriella, no, you can't assign one student at a time. However, on my end, I don't know if it does this on your end, it shows me who is everybody. Like it has, that was not a good sentence. It shows me everybody's name. So you can call out kids that would be, you know, maybe writing when they shouldn't be. If you lock a student as well, they're not able to write on it either. So you can lock everybody down and then unlock one at a time. But I find it actually is, it's a little bit harder that way because it requires more like locking and unlocking. I tend to keep things pretty simple when I'm doing these so that I don't have to worry too much about like doing all the tech stuff behind them. I just get onto them if they're not behaving well in the room. Okay, I'm going to try to share my screen again with you so that you can see that you can write on a slide. Okay, so here's a slide that I have up. I'm also going to give you the ability, oh, maybe I can't because it's an image. Never mind, I can't because it's just an image. So that won't work. However, you are able to open to a white page, which I think is even more effective. That's the only way I've really used these is using this white page. And you can have as many white pages as you want. So if everybody's, you know, being crazy on one, you can flip over to another one and everybody moves to that same slide again. In the text version of this, you can come up here if you have the text version. Oh, I don't think I've turned it on. Here we go. If you have the text version, like if you have type in the text, you can ask them this. Beep, beep. You need to draw your text box first. This is.
And Katie, while you're doing that, we did have a question from Melanie about sharing your screen.
Yes.
And the options of how, like, instead of the infinity mirror, how could you share your screen similar to what you did when you shared your Google Slide option?
Right.
Could you
so
explain that process for them?
Absolutely. The infinity option is, I think it makes me dizzy to watch it. So instead, when I go to, I don't believe it's going to show you on mine because I think that's just in my mode. So I'm just going to describe to you what it sounds like because you can't see it since you're not the presenter. And I mean, seriously, Molly, go on, sweetie, go on. You're all right. Good Lord.
We really don't hear her, so she's not bothering us at all.
Like, it's so loud in my ears. Instead of having share your whole screen, you can share an application window. So what I do is the window, like when I open my Chrome browser, the window that I want to work in, I pull it out so that it's its own window. I can show you how to do that part. I'll show you how to do that. I'm going to share my entire screen with you right now. So let's say, yep. Let's see how I have all these windows open. Let's say that the only thing I wanted to show them was this particular presentation. I'm going to grab that tab and pull it out, and now it's its own window. In BBB, it gives you the option of sharing just that one window or sharing your whole desktop. If you share your whole desktop, that's when it does the screen in screen. That's when it gets matrixy. But if you just share one application window at a time, they won't be able to see anything else. The nice thing about it too is that if you move it around, they won't be able to see it. So when I have my office hours, for example, I have a screensaver that I use right here, my Zoom screensaver. And I'll show you how I put that up in I'm going to stop sharing this, and then I'm going to share my screensaver instead. So I pull that screensaver into its own window. I lost you guys. And I'm just going to share the screensaver window. Now what it means is anybody who comes into my office hours sees my or welcome or whatever, but I can actually keep working on my computer and they don't see anything. So if I'm waiting for someone to show up, I can keep working, and I just keep that over on the side behind all my other screens, and then they don't see what I'm working on. Okay. So I think we're going to go back to the presentation. Larger again. And let's look at our spicy. Don't be scared. So if you haven't played with the BBB breakout rooms, we're going to play with those very quickly. BBB breakout rooms, you can actually do a whole session just on the breakout rooms themselves. If you haven't oh wait, you guys can still see my screensaver. If you haven't been brave enough to use them yet, we're going to try them today so that you see that it's actually not as difficult as it seems like it would be. So in the breakout rooms, it actually, again, on my end will look different than on your end, but you will get an invitation. So on my side, if I click, I am going to share my screen with you in the matrix view. I'm really sorry.
And Gabriella has a while we wait for that to happen, Gabriella has a question. How do you manage breakout rooms when you're going solo, when you don't have someone moderating?
Right. So breakout rooms, that's part of what we're going to talk about a little bit. Breakout rooms are not for everybody. They're not for all students, and they're not for all grade levels. They can be for all grade levels, but how you moderate them will be very different. So if you have an elementary level class and you know that you're going to be using breakout rooms, what you might try. Working from home, am I right? So if I know I'm going to be turning kids loose into breakout rooms and they're not secondary level kids, I might see if I could touch base with a few parents that could sort of help moderate those rooms. So a lot of times you have parents that are sitting with their kids, they can be moderators in a room, but if they're younger kids, you may only want to use like 1 or 2 breakout rooms, not a bunch of small groups. In secondary, provided your kids are acting like human beings and you know which ones are not going to be, they can kind of moderate themselves. And I'm going to show you how you can pop in and how you can listen in on those conversations. So over here on the side, you're just going to have to ignore the matrix screen. And instead, over next to users, see where I am over here next to users? There's a little gear shift because I'm the moderator, or it's my thing, so I have a gear shift here. When I open that, it says create breakout rooms. Okay, so here's can you guys see this? I lost you. So here's my breakout rooms that I'm going to create. It asks me the number of rooms, so I'm just going to put us into 2 rooms. It asks me the time, the duration of time that I want you in there. The shorter, the better. So I'm going to set it for, I'm going to say 5 minutes, but I can end it at any point. So I'm just going to set it for 5, but know that I'll probably end it sooner. Now, you can click a button that allows users to choose a breakout room. If you have older students and you have rooms assigned by topic, this would be a great choice for them to make. So maybe you have room 1 is going to be about fractions, room 2 is going to be about multiplication, room 3 will be about ratios. They get to pick which room they're going to go into. I don't personally let them pick. However, you certainly can. Instead, I drag and drop. So I'm going to put students in my rooms however I see fit. So we're going to split them. I can also click randomly assign if I don't really care, and it's going to randomly assign them to groups. Now, when I create this, you all will receive invitations to those breakout rooms. On my screen, the breakout room tab here, I think you all are probably in your rooms. I don't know if you can see this, but the breakout room tab here, I'll screenshot it and show you, shows me who's in each room, how long they've been in there, and gives me the option to end the breakout room whenever I'm ready to. Okay, I'm going to pop into your rooms.
You are currently the only person in this conference.
Katie, we had a question in our room, which was, can you take yourself out of a breakout room? And you are muted, Katie, so unmute yourself.
Sorry. You can't take yourself.
We still don't hear you.
Oh, hold on.
Maybe the dog chewed the cord. There you go. The echo test takes forever, just so that you know. The echo test, and that's so you can use it. Okay, so Greta, you can hear me, Nancy, and Katie is finishing the echo test, and she'll be in just a flash. She'll unmute herself.
I think I'm back.
Okay, can anyone hear Katie? I still don't hear Katie. Oh, no. Okay, Marianne does. It must be me.
Everybody's good? Okay, well, I'm going to keep going. If that happens, by the way, and your sound gets messed up, if you click the leave audio and then rejoin audio, it'll reconnect your audio. So just know that. In the room, so we were talking in the other room about being able to, can kids exit themselves out of the group? No, they can't exit themselves out of the room until you end the breakout group. So what you can do is assign a leader to each group. And when that group is done, they can put it in the public chat, and the public chat still works, and they can just tell you room 1 is done. And then you go into room 1 and you end room 1. Yes, you might have to exit out with the sound and exit back in, and come back in if the sound hasn't connected right. Okay, I'm going to keep going, even if there's sound issues, just because we're recording and I want to make sure we get through everything. Okay, so I'm going to flip back over. I'm going to stop sharing this screen, and I'm going to flip back over to my presentation. Go to my application window. Okay. So another fun thing that you can do with students in the Spicy is a Quizlet Live. I'm not sure if you all have ever used a Quizlet Live before, but it actually lends itself really well to an environment like this. So I'm going to, if you go to the agenda, there's a link to Quizlet here. If you'll click on the Quizlet link, let me open mine. Now I have lists here that I use just for the purposes of today, and so that it's more fun than A Midsummer Night's Dream. I'm going to search for a Disney quiz for us to play with instead. So let's find Disney. We'll use this one. So when you open any list in Quizlet, and if you want more information on Quizlet, I'm more than happy to email that to you or send it out to you after. This is just going to show you the live session of it. So what live does is it puts students in teams. So it'll automatically assign students to teams. It will show a question that will show everybody's screen, but then if you'll have your team slides up, and if you have the answer, you answer for your team. If a teammate has the answer, the teammate answers for the team. So it's better to understand it when it's working. So let's go into a live session and we'll play for just a second. Okay, so I'm going to select teams. You can have them play individually and it's still fun, but teams is a lot more fun and it adds the collaboration element. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to have them go by definitions. Go ahead and put this code into your link. So So I'm going to do the link with you. Put this code into your link here. Okay, I see some people. I see Greta and Emma. Okay, are we mostly all in? Let's take a look and see. Okay, so I have 8 of us in the room. Looks like we're missing quite a few. So I'm still just going to go with the 8, if that's okay. And I'll share my screen so that if it's not the 8, if it's more than that, if you weren't able to sign in, then you can see it. Okay, so here we are. We're going to create the game with 8 students. This should show you on your screen. You should see what teams you have. So kids can see who's on their team, and then I'm going to start the game as the teacher. Now, you should see a question on your screen, and then if you have the answer to the question, click it. If you don't have the answer, that means one of your teammates has it. So as students go, their teams are competing based on the groupings that have been done in Quizlet Live. Oh, see, if you get one wrong, it takes you all the way back to the beginning. So this one is nice because it's a lot of fun for kids. They're studying something and they're working together in teams. So it hits a lot of the bells and whistles. I'm going to go ahead and end this game just for the sake of time. But know that one of the advantages of Quizlet is that they have a huge library of lists. So if you're looking for, like, if you're doing a topic on, like, I don't know, cell structure, you could probably search for that and not have to make one, and you can just use it in a game format. So that's a good one to use. Can You Hear Me Now is a vocabulary game that works very similarly to like a taboo game. Only with this one, you're going to use the private chat. So if you click on somebody's name as the moderator, if you click on their name, right click on their name, it's going to give you the option to start a private chat with them. So I would start a private chat with one student and I would give them the term, the vocabulary term. At that point, they would then go back into the room and I would unmute them, and that student would then describe to their peers what this vocabulary term was. And the first person to type the word into the chat wins. So it's essentially taking a vocabulary review game and it's reformatting it so that it's online. So again, let me just walk through how that works. You would click on a student's name and start a private chat, send them the vocabulary term, then unmute that student and let that particular student describe that word to their peers, and the first person to put it in the public chat wins. So that's a fun, low maintenance, like you don't have to set a whole lot up for that one, and really like that one. The last option, or the last sort of tool that we're going to look at is vocabulary bingo. I forgot about vocabulary bingo. So vocabulary bingo is very similar. It's low maintenance for you. The kids do it all. So they would come with a sheet of paper, and on their sheet of paper, you would have them draw a big bingo board with 9 boxes in it. Okay. I did this with 3rd graders a couple of weeks ago, and they had a blast. In the center, they get a free spot. Then you have them write vocabulary words in any order all around their board. So they get to put their words where they're creating their bingo board is what they're doing. And then you call out when everyone's ready, have them hold them up and show you their boards. When everyone's ready, you then call out the term. And if they have the word, they think they have the word, they put a marker over the word. So they're practicing by having you work, you're giving them the term and they're finding the word, but they also get the game involvement and they're playing against each other. It's a lot of fun, particularly with particularly with elementary kids. You can probably jazz it up for some secondary students as well. But that one I've used specifically with elementary before and it's worked really well. Are there any questions about either of those items before we move on to the last one? Okay, I'm going to keep on cruising then. So the last one is, it's not really a collaboration, but it's another way to use virtual time with students in an assessment mode. So this is called Battle the Boss. In Battle the Boss, you can actually use in your classroom. Is when a student finishes a task, when they're ready to battle the boss, they come up to you, you ask them 1 or 2 assessment questions. If they get them right, they've won. And then they get to move on to the next activity. We're going to apply the same concept in a virtual learning format. So to do that, I'm going to show you my Canvas course. This is my sandbox in Canvas. So in Canvas, or you can do this in Google Classroom if you want as well. It works the same way. In Canvas particularly, I've broken my unit up. See, I have part 1 of unit 1 and I have part 2 of unit 2. In part 1, if they're going to work their way through all of these tasks and then they hit a checkpoint. So in a checkpoint, when they open it, what it says to them is, congratulations, you're now ready to battle the boss. You're in a one-on-one video call. Ms. Brown will ask you 1 or 2 individual questions about concepts or skills from the unit so far. This is a complete or incomplete task. If you get the questions right, you move on to the next module. If you get them wrong, you're going to have to go back and review your material and try again. Now, I know that the first thing teachers think is there is no way, especially because I was a middle school teacher, there's no way I can have individual assessments with 130 something kids, sometimes more than that. You can, because these are done in like 2 minutes. They're very, very short. So what I put up is a Google form for my students, and I'll send you the template as well. I'll drop it into our agenda. It asks students to schedule their time for Battle the Boss. I would come up then with a list of times. So at 9 o'clock, Jane's coming. At 9:04, Tommy's coming. At 9:07, Gracie's coming, all the way down. And then I stay in my big blue button room. I just sit here. And students rotate in at their time. And when they're done, I kick them out. Have a list of questions. I typically use 10 to 15. And then I ask different questions to different students. If in one question you can tell that a student has it, good. You're done, move on. And then that way, it just gives me face time with a student to clarify if there's something going on, if they're not getting something or whatever. It gives them that one-on-one time for a very short window just to be like, yes, you got it. No, you don't really have it. Let's look at this instead, and then come back and we'll try again. And so that's a quick way to sort of rotate kids through. I see Nancy's comment here that you can create appointments in the Canvas calendar as well. So I'll show you where that is. In the calendar over here, is it on? This is my sandbox, so I don't usually plan it. In my calendar here, I can schedule appointments. It's just like Outlook. I can schedule appointments with students at different times, and it'll give them the link to my room and it will send them in. So if I would create a new event,
and you can have it where students sign up for that as well. And you can have multiple students or just one student, and you can have a student, they can only select one time so they don't monopolize you all day.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nancy. So that makes it a little easier then to manage the crowd control. And plus, remember, it's okay if you have 1 or 2 kids in the room at a time. You're really just looking at a small group is what you're working with. And then you just ask different questions to the different students. So you can do a couple at a time. Once they've completed this in their Canvas module, Where's my Canvas module? Oh crap, I closed it. Once they've completed this, they're able to, I mark it as completed. Oops, I mark it as completed in my, it's like a grade, but I don't count it as a grade. You can uncheck the counting it for a grade. I mark it as completed, and then that opens up the next module for them. So they're not able to move into the next module until they've had a check with me. See how this module says that the prerequisites are part 1. So you can't move on until you've had a checkpoint meeting with me. Okay, that's it. Are there any questions I can answer before we call it a day? I hope that you guys have found some sort of little nugget of something that you can either use or that like triggers something that you could use. I think the best advice that I give to teachers when you're working virtually is to simulate your classroom in the ways that matter. So I hope you're able to use some of these. Thank you. I'm glad you all enjoyed it.
Yeah, you gave us some really good ideas and some really tips. And E. Johnson is asking, will this be available to look at again? And the answer is?
Yes, this is being recorded. And Nancy, I'm not sure how it actually will go out. Hi, Andrea. I don't know how that goes out.
What will happen is we'll start the recording, and then you'll go to the top right-hand side where the menu button dots are. Some people call them the snowman. I call them, but wait, there's more. And you will end the session. And then when you go back to your big blue button, where you have all your big blue button rooms at, you'll click on this particular session and scroll down to the bottom, and you'll see the recording.
Oh, great. And then I send it to you guys, right?
Yeah, and what you'll do is there's a couple of things there. And for those of you who are new to using Big Blue Button, when you do that, and I'm going to have to answer a call. I'm going to answer a call, but I'm going to finish this answer right now for you. Is that you will get to see statistics as well as seeing the video. And so the video can be downloaded, and then you put it into your Canvas Studio, and you're able to use it in a Canvas course as well.
Thank you, Nancy. We appreciate that.
So I'm going to duck out. I'm going to let you end the recording and follow all that. And are you presenting this again for us?